Stop writing on-the-nose dialogue. Stop explaining everything to your reader. Stop making your characters say exactly what they mean. Because real life doesn't work that way, and when your story does, it feels fake. But what's the fix? Subtext. Subtext is the difference between amateur writing and page-turning fiction. It's what makes your dialogue crackle, your descriptions hit harder, and your readers lean in, hungry for what's really happening. And in this video, I'm going to break down 5 simple ways to master subtext in your writing. My name is Tim Grahl, and I'm the CEO of StoryGrid, where we've helped thousands of writers sharpen their skills, finish their books, and build a legacy. I've written 6 books myself, most recently The Shithead, which has earned praise from multiple New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling authors. My partner, Sean Coyne, is the creator of StoryGrid and a story expert with over 30 years in the publishing industry. He's edited and published hundreds of books, and his track record, well, 2.5 times more profitable bestsellers than traditional publishers. Everything I'm about to share with you comes straight from his decades of research into what makes a story work. So if you want to write a book that readers will love and can't stop talking about, you're in the right place. Let's start with the definition. Subtext is the meaning beneath the surface of action, dialogue, and description. The truth that isn't stated outright but is felt and understood by the reader. It's when readers understand what's really happening between characters, even though you never directly state it on the page. Subtext allows readers to discover the real story themselves. It creates those moments where they think, oh, I see what's really going on here, without you having to directly explain it to them. So let's look at 5 ways to create this kind of subtext in your writing. The first is subtext in dialogue. Dialogue is one of the richest areas for subtext because people rarely say exactly what they mean. In real life, conversations are layered with hidden meanings, unspoken truths, and words left unsaid. Whether it's out of fear, social expectations, or the need to protect themselves, characters often dance around what they truly feel. Great dialogue isn't just about what's being said, it's about what's left out, what's hinted at, and what's deliberately avoided. When done well, subtext keeps the readers engaged because it makes them active participants in uncovering the truth. So here's 3 different ways to add subtext to your dialogue. The first is the most simple. Let the characters lie. Characters rarely say exactly what they mean, especially when protecting something they want, or in their characters rarely say what they mean, especially when protecting something they want or when they're in direct conflict. So you want to give them reasons to hide their true feelings. Here's an example. How's the new job? Lisa asked. Great, I love it so far. John's jagged fingernails raked against the scabs on his wrist. Everything I hoped for. Because mom said they're still hiring if you, I said, it's great. This would work well following a scene where the protagonist got chewed out by his boss or put on notice. By having the dialogue directly contradict what the reader knows to be true, we add a layer of discovery that allows the reader to discover what's going on through their own logic. The next thing is to create 2 conversations at once. The surface conversation says one thing, and the real conversation underneath says another. Here's an example. Remember that night swimming at the lake house? Emma asked, when the dock lights went out and we had to be quiet because your parents were on the porch. The water was so cold. Well, it started out that way. On the surface, they're just talking about swimming, but there's an intimate memory beneath their words, one they can reference with just a few careful details. The meaning comes through what they chose to mention and what is left unsaid. The next way is to use strategic silence. Sometimes the most powerful subtext comes from what characters don't say. Give them opportunities to respond where their silence speaks volumes. Here's an example. I heard about the promotion, Mike said. Karen kept sorting the mail. You deserved it. I mean, after all the extra hours you put in. She slid his letter across the table without looking up. Karen, your car is blocking my garage. Karen's refusal to engage with Mike's comments tells us everything we need to know about their relationship and the real story behind the promotion. So how do you make all of this work together by adding subtext to your dialogue? Well, for any of these techniques, to create effective subtext, you want to give each character a clear, conflicting object of desire that they're trying to pursue. Create situations where speaking directly would cost them something. Let readers piece together the truth through small details. And here's the thing, and this goes for all subtexts. You have to trust the readers to understand what's really happening without explaining it. The key is remembering that subtext isn't about being clever or mysterious. It's about showing people how they really talk when they can't or won't say what they truly mean. All right, so that's subtext through dialogue. Let's look at the second way to add subtext, which is through setting details. Setting descriptions create powerful opportunities for subtext through what you choose to describe and how you choose to describe it. The right details can reveal character emotions, build tensions, and tell deeper stories without ever directly stating them. So there's three ways you can do this. The first is how you choose to describe the setting. Every setting contains countless details you could describe. There's just too many things for you to describe. So the ones you select and how you describe them create that subtext by showing what matters in the moment of your story. So take a basement, for example. We could take this same exact basement and describe it in two different ways. The first, the shadows gathered in the corners like old secrets, each step down taking him deeper into waiting darkness. Even the damp air felt wrong against his skin, heavy with something he didn't want to name. Or we could describe it like this. The basement's cool darkness promised escape from the summer heat. String lights crisscrossed the ceiling, ready to transform concrete walls into the perfect dance floor. Even the usually gloomy corners felt alive with possibility. The same space carries completely different meaning based on what's about to happen there. One promises horror, the other celebration, all through careful selection of details. Think about how a realtor sells a house. They don't just list features, they shape perception. A cramped breakfast nook becomes cozy. Outdated wood paneling has charm. As a writer, you do the same thing. You don't just describe a setting, you frame it. The details you highlight shape the reader's emotions, guiding them to feel what your characters feel. So that's the first way. The second way is to let settings tell the story. The location where a scene happens can reveal crucial information without a bunch of exposition. The setting itself becomes part of the narrative, adding layers of meaning to what's being said or done. So consider this example. We need to talk about the will, he said. They sat in the living room, afternoon light warming the leather couch. Or we could put that same exact thing in a different setting. We need to talk about the will, he said. They sat in Jenny's room, where her soccer uniform still hung on the closet door, waiting for next season games. The second scene says so much more without explaining anything. This setting, moving it from the living room to the dead daughter's room, tells us all kinds of things about loss, grief, and the painful task of dealing with someone's belongings after they're gone. Be deliberate about the settings you choose for your story so they add deeper elements without you or the characters having to directly say them. All right, the third way to use subtext with your setting is to show different characters' perspectives of the same place. When two characters experience the same place differently, their contrasting perspectives can reveal their inner states, past traumas, or hopes for the future, all without you directly having to state any of that. So imagine a dog shelter. Through one character's eyes, barking echoed off concrete walls, each excited jump and wagging tail bringing back the taste of blood, the crunch of gravel under her head, the 3 surgeries that followed. Another character might describe the exact same place like this. The cacophony of barks felt like a welcome home. Each wagging tail and hopeful face promised afternoon walks and belly rubs, tennis balls thrown until arms gave out. Two characters, same place, different stories. The setting details reveal their contrasting emotional realities without ever explaining them directly. So how do we make this work? How do we add subtext to our settings in a way that works? Well, you want to choose details that matter to your characters emotionally. So you don't tell the emotion, you choose details about the setting that automatically show that emotion to the reader. Let the setting echo the underlying tensions in your scene, show how different characters react to the same environment, and again, trust the readers to make the connections without directly explaining them. The goal isn't to fill your scenes with symbolic meaning, it's to show how the physical world naturally reflects and reveals the deeper story that you're telling. Now, before we go on to step 3 on how to add subtext to your writing, I want to tell you about our scene writing checklist. This is a free resource. You can download it right now at storygrid.com/checklist. And this will show you what it takes to write an exciting page-turning scene. It's the exact checklist our coaches and mentors use at StoryGrid to analyze scenes, find out what's wrong, and help writers level up their writing. You can access it right now for free at storygrid.com/checklist. All right, now let's get back into it. So we talked about adding first subtext to your dialogue, then adding subtext with the setting, and now we're on to number 3, which is subtext in character actions. Words can lie, but the body rarely does. Character actions often reveal a deeper truth than what's being said aloud. A forced smile, a lingering touch, a step backward. These small gestures can carry enormous weight, hinting at emotions your characters may not be ready to express. Physical behavior is one of the most effective ways to create subtext because it allows readers to experience a character's true feelings without being directly told. A character might say, "I'm fine," but if they're twisting their wedding ring, avoiding eye contact, or gripping their coffee cup too tightly, we know better. Readers naturally pick up on body language, micro-expressions, and involuntary movements, making it an excellent tool for layering meaning into a scene. The key is choosing actions that arise organically from a character's inner conflict rather than forcing them for effect. So here's 3 powerful ways to use physical behavior to create subtext in your writing. The first is actions that contradict words. When characters say one thing but do another, readers naturally look for the truth in their behavior. "I'm happy for you," Jenna said, lifting her champagne flute. She clinked it against his too hard, the glass cracking in her grip. She laughed quickly, shaking her head. "Guess I got carried away." Or, "Of course I don't care," Mark said, tossing his phone onto the table face down. He smiled, easy and practiced, but every time it buzzed, his eyes flicked towards it just for a second. In both cases, the words say one thing, but the actions tell another story. The crack of the glass, the flickering glance, these small unconscious behaviors reveal the truth beneath the dialogue, letting readers see what the characters won't say aloud. We can also reveal truth through body language. Small physical gestures can speak volumes about what characters are really feeling. "Of course I trust you with the company," David said to his son. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His eyes kept drifting to the family photo on his desk, the one from before the investigation. "You've earned this promotion." Without ever mentioning David's doubts, his closed-off posture and focus on the old photo tells us everything about his real feelings toward his son's promotion. We can also use physical distance that show relationships. How characters position themselves relative to each other reveals the true state of their relationships. Here's an example. The break room wasn't that large, but somehow Amanda and Brett managed to maintain 10 feet between them while making coffee. She grabbed her mug the moment he set down the pot. He waited by the door until she finished with the cream, then crammed himself in the corner pretending to read the bulletin board until she left. We never have to explain that Amanda and Brett had a falling out, and yet their careful dance of avoiding physical proximity tells the story for us. So we have to make action and subtext work, and the ways to do this are to give characters clear emotions that they're trying to hide. Choose behaviors that naturally emerge from those emotions, and then let the physical actions contradict or complicate what's being said. And we come back here every single time, and that's to trust the readers to understand the meaning behind the movements. Remember, the goal isn't to create elaborate pantomimes, it's to show how people's bodies often betray the truths their words are trying to hide. So now let's look at the 4th way to add subtext, and this is through power dynamics. power dynamics create natural opportunities for subtext because people rarely discuss them directly. So here's 3 ways to reveal power shifts without directly stating them. So you can just show the status changes through behavior. That's the first one. Small behavioral shifts can signal major changes in power dynamics. Here's an example. Last week, Marcus had knocked before entering the CEO's office. Today, he walked straight in, dropped a folder on her desk, and took the chair by the window. Sandra's hands tightened on her pen. I assume those are the merger documents. Among other things, he pulled out his phone and started scrolling. Without explaining that Marcus now has leverage over Sandra, their changed behaviors tell the whole story. We can also look at how to do this in social structures such as the workplace. Organizational hierarchies create natural tension that can reveal deeper conflicts. The summer interns always ate lunch together at the corner table, except today. Katie sat with the senior analyst, leaving an empty chair between Raj and Chin. When Chin reached for the salt, 3 people offered theirs at once. Katie didn't look over once. We don't need to explain that Katie got the permanent position they were all competing for. The shift in seating arrangements and others' behaviors tell us everything. We can also just see relationship changes through actions. When relationships shift, people's behavior changes in subtle but very telling ways. At the start of the summer, every Saturday night revolved around Zach, his house, his playlist, his stories. By September, he was the last one invited. He showed up late to Alex's party, but no one looked up when he walked in. When he told a joke, the laughter took just a second too long. By the time they ordered pizza, his leg was shaking and he kept glancing at the door. The scene reveals their changed relationships not through what's present, but through what's missing from their usual interactions. So to make power dynamics works for subtext in your stories, you have to establish clear baseline behaviors before you then, in the future, show the changes. Use small details that signal larger shifts. Let organizational structures create natural tension and show how relationships change through altered routines. Remember, power rarely declares itself outright. It's in the pause before someone speaks, the chair they choose at the table, the way a conversation shifts when they enter the room. All right, so those are the first 4. The 5th one is how to use subtext through recurring details. Recurring details aren't just decorations in your story, they're echoes of meaning, threading through scenes to deepen emotional impact and reinforce key themes. When used well, they create a sense of cohesion, allowing readers to make connections on a subconscious level. A single object, phrase, or image can evolve over time, taking on new significance as the story unfolds. So here are 3 ways to use them effectively. You can have meaningful objects and images. When objects appear multiple times, they gather emotional weight and meaning. Here's an example. The first time Anna saw the music box, it sat pristine on her mother's dresser, tinkling out Fleur Elise. The second time, it lay silent in a moving box wrapped in her mother's best silk scarf, and now it sat on her own dresser, its melody worn thin and wavering, a hairline crack splitting the dancer in two. She wound it up anyway. The music box becomes more than just an object. It reflects the relationship between the mother and daughter without ever directly addressing it, and it does this over time. You can also use weather and setting as mirror. So environmental details can echo and amplify the emotional undercurrent of your scenes. They had their first kiss during a summer storm, rain drumming against his car windows while lightning turned the world silver bright. They had their first fight in October, dead leaves skittering between them across the empty park bench. They had their last conversation in January. No snow, no rain, no wind, just cold, still air, and long shadows stretching across his driveway. The weather isn't just background noise, it's a reflection of the story's emotional core, echoing the highs and lows of the character's journey. You can also have themes supporting details. So choose recurring details that reinforce your story's deeper meaning. The broken clock in her father's study, the watch she never remembered to wind, the digital display frozen on her dashboard. Time kept stopping around Kate, just like it had the night of the accident. until the day she found herself changing the batteries in her bedside alarm and realized she wanted to hear the seconds moving forward again. The repeated motif of stop time builds meaning throughout the story, becoming a way to track the character's journey through grief without directly naming it. So how do you take these recurring details and make sure they work? Because even in this video, it's hard to give specific examples because these would often be over a longer story. But the way to do that is to first choose details that can carry multiple meanings. Then let the details change or evolve as your story progresses. Use these sparingly. 3 meaningful appearances often work better than 10. And again, trust the readers to connect the dots between appearances without you directly calling them out. Recurring details work best when they feel natural to your scenes, not like obvious symbols dropped in to make a point. Let their meaning build organically through how your characters interact with them. So to keep your story engaging so the reader is experiencing the story instead of you just telling them everything, you need subtext. And there's 5 different ways I want you to think about adding subtext to your story. The first is through dialogue. The second is through setting details. The third is through character actions. The fourth is through power dynamics. And finally, the fifth is through recurring details. Now, are you ready to put this into practice? Because here's the thing about subtext. Like any other writing skill, it takes practice and feedback to master. You can understand all of the techniques that I've taught in this video, but without somebody pointing out where you're missing opportunities or being too obvious in your own work, it's really hard to improve. Think about it. Every great writer had to learn these skills somewhere. They didn't just wake up one day knowing how to layer meaning into their scenes. They practiced, they got feedback, and they refined their craft. This is exactly what we tackle head on in our scene writing workshop. Through weekly live training and direct feedback on your writing, you'll learn how to identify the right places for subtext and how to weave them into your writing. You'll learn how to layer different levels of subtext into your writing and figure out where you're weak and spot these and fix them in your story. And you'll do this because you're getting personalized feedback on your scenes from expert story grid coaches who can show you exactly what's working, what isn't, and how to fix your writing. Our next workshop is coming up, and over 6 weeks, you'll join a small group of dedicated writers limited to 30 students per cohort and get weekly live training on essential scene writing skills, personal feedback on your writing from story grid coaches, daily practice exercises that build your craft, and a supportive writing community to share your journey. The last 2 workshops sold out completely. So if you're ready to master the art of writing scenes that keep readers turning pages, make sure you go to storygrid.com/workshop, and that link is down in the description as well. Now, if you want to keep this idea of subtext going, I want you to learn more about showing versus telling, because this is a big part of subtext, and there's a video on your screen right now that will help you understand this in a whole new light. But either way, thanks so much for being a writer, and thanks for being a part of our community here at StoryGrid, and I'll see you next time.